Good morning, everybody. I'm just going to dive right in. We have sort of a turbo pace here. So my name is Armen Berjikley. I'm the Senior Director of Strategy at Ultimate Software. I lived a couple lives as an entrepreneur, CEO, founder, and most recently of a company called Kenjoya. But my entire professional career has been dedicated to this idea of technology and empathy and how they can work together, how they should work together. And today I'm going to talk about in Indy 500 pace, this idea of one of the most advanced technologies that falls under that umbrella, which is artificial intelligence. And I'm going to walk through the arc of what we believe it can be, what it is today, and certainly where the origin story of it is as well. So diving right into sort of the situation that we are in the world. It's not just you. Things are getting a lot faster. The polling from pretty much any type of industry sense gives you this idea that the acceleration for the next couple of years is faster and faster and faster than decades past. This situation is, of course, chaos in a lot of ways, right? And if you're a Game of Thrones fan, chaos is a ladder. What's the opportunity? What's the weapon that's going to help people win versus lose? People believe technology is going to be that significant differentiator between the haves and the have-nots. And then people have quantified, well, what's available? What's the amount of loot that's for grabs if you are successful in this type of world? And it's a trillion type of figure. So, if we sort of follow the needs of technology and begin to worship it, I think that's the wrong thing. And that's what I will posit here in the next 25 or so minutes, is the idea isn't to put technology in and deify it, because it will be this great wedge. I believe it's actually to harness the technology to help us as folks. And if you kind of look at what people are doing to make technology work for them, artificial intelligence is that big rally flag. That's the one that folks feel is the part of technology where you'll get the most bang for the buck. And I think it's an eye roller at this point, right? There's so much marketing hype around it. You can't go to a conference like this one without seeing AI emblazoned on absolutely everything. And so you see sort of, public companies are really sort of squeezing that lemon as much as they can. Tons of venture capital is going into it. And then most interestingly, many companies are claim to be piloting it or using AI. And if you saw what happened last week with Zuckerberg, this idea that AI will be the solution to our problems. I love this quote, right? It's like we used to always say the market will solve all problems by itself and kind of turn our eye to it. Now we say AI will fix it. Zuck said AI will fix it 30 different times and some derivation of that per testimony last week. And that means content moderation, optimization, solving really intricate human problems. And so pretty big stage. So we see what's kind of going on here, right? Everyone keeps talking about it. Lots of people are apparently doing something with it. We are putting a ton of hope and faith in AI, but the fact of the matter is, if you go around this room, any room, the definition of what in the world is AI is really, really, really hard to come by. Does anyone recognize that car, by the way? Knight Rider, yes, I grew up with Knight Rider. This is a car that would talk and have witty banter with David Hasselhoff, and you can imagine how hard that must have been. So what in the world is AI? I think it leads really well into the definition I like. It's cute, but it's also pretty powerful. Making computers act like they do in the movies. What should we define as the minimum bar for artificial intelligence? This is a really good one. It's actually a very stressful test, right? And of course, Terminator, if you're playing AI presentation bingo, you can mark off seeing Terminator. The sense that I love about this quote is what happens with machines in movies. They learn from their experiences, right? They start in a certain part of the arc, they encounter the world, and then they start to make different decisions based on what they're seeing. They get smarter. Terminator, in its case, isn't about the death and destruction and mayhem. It's the fact that the machine learns empathy, right, at the end with the whole thumbs up and all that, right? Very touching. So for me, the definition of artificial intelligence is a computer or program, an algorithm, whatever you want to call it, that experiences the world with us. It learns from that experience. And then the things that it learns aren't obvious. They're not in textbooks already. If you sat it down at the end of the day and said, what did you figure out? You'd be able to say, oh, wow, I hadn't realized that. That's not obvious. And that actually now, given the data, the justification, the evidence, that makes sense. So here's that bar, right? So technology is bringing a great deal of change. AI is the technology of choice for winning this war of change. And then I'm basically challenging that a lot of the definition is vapid, it's empty, it's weak, right? Like you walk into the room and the lights turn on, you could claim that as AI, but I say that doesn't work for me. I'm chasing a different outcome, right? And so this is something that I've begun talking about very, very recently, which is what's the belief system At Ultimate Software, we have an AI system. I'm going to talk a little bit about it in the next few minutes or so. But I do believe that every vendor that pursues the world of artificial intelligence should begin to be talking in this language. It's a code of conduct, a religion, a declaration of principles, whatever you want to call it, right? But I really do want to understand that if we have this capability that we believe in, we're going to develop it, and we're going to look at a lot of this over the next few minutes, what should be the tenets of it? And so in my world, these are the values. We believe that we must respect emotions, right? I hinted at that at the beginning of sort of where my dedication has been. People are emotional creatures. That is where we actually originate all of our decision making, is we feel and then we act. And then we add the logic after we feel, right? I hate this cell phone, and then, oh, it's time for me to get a new one anyways and get rid of it, right? But that feeling comes up first. So any machine that tries to work with people, especially in the artificial intelligence realm, where you're trying to learn and grow and learn new things, you have to respect the fact that people have emotions. The second point, working with us as we are, is really interesting to me. If you dig deep into even the most advanced interfaces today, which you would say is Siri or Alexa, Cortana, they're still making us talk the way they need us to talk, right? And that's the closest we've come to sort of a natural human interaction, right? And if you, like even Apple autocomplete, I laugh every time. No Apple, I don't want to say ducking ever, right? And so it still hasn't advanced to the point that machines are working on our home court. They speak the way we speak. They work with us as we are, whether that be a certain language or a certain dialect or certain concept in mind. Now, ensuring every voice is heard is a really important part too. AI should not be designed to benefit the CEO, CFO, CHRO only, right? I mean, that should be a derivative of it. My worldview actually turns it on its head, right? There's lots of people in a given organization, obviously lots of customers in the world if you want to look at that side of things, right? Everyone has a voice, and that voice is trying to be heard, but most voices are not heard, right? Whether that person's introverted, whether that person doesn't have the right job title, whether that person is English as a second language in an American company, right? Can we purpose machines to help bring out the democracy of those voices? I think that's really, really important. And it leads to the last 2 points. One, focus on the idea that if we can partner up with people, can we unlock potential? And with the people in our world, we focus on human capital. If we focus on the people first, if we enable them, if we do all the things that I just said in those first 3 bullet points, we believe that leads to fundamentally more excellent organizations, not the other way around. Now, what do we not want to do in a code of conduct? I think this is super important. In our neck of the woods in Silicon Valley, replacing people is sometimes like the goal. Sometimes it's the honor. Sometimes that's what gets you the funding. I think that's absolutely the wrong way to go. I think artificial intelligence should be an assistant to folks, should be a helper, should be a partner, an enabler, not a replacer. I don't envision a future of that cold office with a blinking fluorescent light and a computer terminal that every periodically says, hire John, fire Christina, et cetera. Like running HR with a joystick is not a vision I believe in. It's not even a capability I think we should be thinking about developing. Now, if I've sort of set up what I believe AI is, I've given it boundaries, well, I've kind of torn it down a little bit, right? Chipping away, where is it helpful? The idea of volume, velocity, stamina, that's obvious, right? I've really thought about sort of where are the 5 areas that a machine really boosts us. And there is no organization, no matter how big, no matter how small, that does not have enough data. At Ultimate, we, for example, recently started using Slack. That is now a whole new addition. It never replaces anything, right? It's always an addition to what you're already trying to grapple with. So there's more stuff all the time. We get tired. So those first 3 things, machine does not get bothered by. The last 2 are a little more insidious or a little more interesting, depending on how you look at it. Continuous learning. People are not required to learn, right? After high school or college, if you're privileged enough to go, that's kind of it, right? You don't have to go and continue educating yourself. Many people want to, but can't because of resources or time or kids. And so a machine can always learn and not get tired of it and have the opportunity to do it. Last one gets a lot of PR play, the unconscious bias angle. We have developed unconscious bias, sort of pattern matching, from our very youngest childhood experiences. It's inbuilt in us. It's really, really difficult to eradicate. Sometimes it's really hard to even understand or admit that we have it. Machines have their own bias. That is something that's super important for everyone to understand. They oftentimes have the bias of the people that create them. I don't argue that point at all. But they don't have an unconscious bias. They have a bias that can be measured and can be sort of diminished over time, whereas an unconscious bias is very, very difficult, as you might imagine, to shake loose. So these are areas where I think a machine can help. About 1.5 years ago, we went on stage at our customer conference and we released something called Xander. Xander encapsulated the ideas and turned them into a bunch of technologies that we can then build products off of. It's our people-first artificial intelligence. You can kind of see why I drive it as people-first. And it's named after Alexander Graham Bell. And yes, he telephoned. We all know that story. But he actually dedicated most of his career to helping people who were hearing impaired communicate. And that really resonated with me in trying to name this sort of offering and capability set. And that divorced from your physical capabilities, maybe your language skills, maybe your station in life, you still have a voice that deserves to be heard. Can we deliver on that? And that's why we called it Xander. What does Xander do that's interesting? 5 other talks that I could give you for 500 hours. I'm not going to do that and burden you with that today, as I've got 14 minutes left. I will tell you the biggest takeaway that I want to convey to you about what we have developed with Xander is that right part of the brain, right? Bless my marketing team's heart. They're trying to show you that we combine both sides of the human brain, the thinking and the feeling. And that feeling side, as you picked up a thread earlier that I mentioned, right? You don't have a chance, a snowball's chance in hell, of really understanding, modeling, predicting, helping grow people if you don't acknowledge that people feel. Right? If you don't acknowledge that we are going to have a lot of touchy-feely sides of what we are going to be thinking about. And so I'll show you how that happens a little bit more in detail here. Again, short talk, can't dive into all the myriad parts of it, but these 2 points I think are the most interesting. The way we have touched upon this idea of emotional intelligence is we've equipped the product offering or the technology offering with these 2 innovations. First is when we look at a piece of content. And that could be a survey response, it could be a performance review, a hiring note, a Glassdoor post, you name it, so sky's the limit, unstructured data. What we see is the same tapestry of emotions that a human brain would see, right? We don't see happy and sad, we certainly don't see positive and negative, because those insults to sort of human language, right? We've developed human language over the millennia to take what's in here and bring it out there and make you understand it. And so the way that we have modeled this is that if you're excited, you're worried, you're confused, you're interested, we will see all of those emotions. We'll see them in their sort of changing granularity as well. Coupling that with this idea of thematics, again, we are focused on human capital market, workplace thematics, onboarding, support, training, executive management, middle management, et cetera. People don't use the same words for these things, right? They actually, even within the same company, different floors have different cultures, certainly genders have different ways of communicating the same things. Language even changes with season, not to mention it gets constantly redefined. So the challenge is if you're building corporate level capabilities, you can't sit there and say, well, it's only going to work if you're a West Coast company that's 80% male and in engineering. That's not going to fly, right? We work across every industry, across every sort of gender and ethnic background. We deal with vernaculars, we deal with emoticons, people misspelling things, you name it. We've encapsulated that. It's about 10 plus years of independent research that we did helped us get these capabilities. But the idea in the end is that we can see how someone feels and what they feel about, and then it's really important to put the cherry on top and say, well, how often does it work? It has to work better than the next best thing. The next best thing is people, right? There is no other technology that we sort of go up against and say, are we 81 versus 80.5? We go up against the human standard. If you've had the misery of reading through survey results, if you've had the trouble of having to go through 40 performance reviews and trying to figure out what's being said and sort of what are people, what's the joie de vivre or the je ne sais quoi, like what is the feeling, that's really hard to do, back to unconscious bias, back to being tired. And so we work at about 80 to 85% out of the box. Humans, for your trivia, are about 75% accurate at dealing with these qualitative signals. Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing, right? I put Elon Musk up here because he always warns about AI while developing crazy AI. And the idea that I have is if we're 75% accurate, I think a lot about that 25% that we miss, right? The text message from your spouse, the email from your manager, the amount of human misery, suffering, missed opportunity that is in that 1 out of 4 error rate is enormous. It's like, can't even be quantified. And so if we can help, again, with the idea that machines' purpose is to partner with folks, enable folks, I think eradicating that problem is actually a really, really big opportunity in the world. So I've kind of teed up some belief systems. I've said what are the sort of differentiators. I've got a little bit of a cutesy graphic that kind of shows this stuff as it's working. Obviously, it doesn't pop these things up as it's doing its thing, but it gives you an indicator that as people are typing in, let's say, a survey result, engagement survey for the company, we're able to figure out, okay, this person's talking about this certain thematic opportunities, they're optimistic about it, workplace environment, they're confident, this person's angry, et cetera. You see sort of the wild variance of emotion, even within a paragraph of text, we had to be able to capture that. We did a study on tweets, which I feel like are probably the dumbest form of human communication that we've evolved to, 140 characters or 280 characters. 80% of tweets have multiple emotions in them. So you really do have to bring your A game if you're trying to try and solve a problem as big as figuring out how people feel. Now, what's the big payoff for all of this? Well, if you guys are managers, I'm probably guessing that many of you go back to the home office, you make decisions all day long, whether you're a manager or not, and your decisions do affect people, right? Not to be dramatic, but it is life and death if someone gets promoted or not. For that person, it totally is, right? We're subsumed, swallowed, crushed by the amount of data that we have to deal with, and the amount of time that we have to do it is negative, basically. So what can we do if we can suddenly go combine the things like demographics and analytical information that has been pretty established, and then add in the qualitative side, how someone feels, what are they feeling it about, how does that change over time? And if you bring that together, it basically gives a different version of intelligence, right? It gives you that superpower, always aiming to give people superpowers and make them feel like superheroes. And the superhero aspect here is that we know when we make decisions in a dearth of time. I often make hiring decisions. I've got 20 candidates, I've got one role, and I've got 1 week. Did I really go and build the spreadsheet that totally blinded everyone's name and time, and we like qualitatively put signals on whether this person is going to bring the best to the team and add the most diversity, or did I go off of that memory of a great conversation I had, right? We inherently are uncomfortable with the shortcuts and the cheat codes that we're taking. So can we help? Can we bring a different level of intelligence to the market and to people so that they get that full sort of left brain, right brain, qualitative, quantitative, EQ, IQ? This all is not a glimmer in my eye. I've been working on this for the better part of 15 years. And at Ultimate, we've been doing it since about 2007, that we've been progressively releasing things into the product. We have 3 products that sort of demonstrate these artificial intelligence capabilities. Sort of the hallmark one is Perception, which is this product that does employee feedback. And managers ultimately would love to take everyone to coffee all the time and figure out what's going on with their worldview, but that doesn't work at scale, at any sort of scale. And so we built a product that basically was a instant one-on-one with a company that could be up to 200, 300,000 people. So it's using those qualitative skills to say, give me your open-ended responses. Tell me what's up. Don't fill out a 100-page multiple choice survey. Just tell me what's going on. The technology will help figure out what's happening in your open-ended responses. Predictive analytics, kind of awesome to bring in qualitative indicators into whether someone's going to stay or go. Google and Facebook do lose employees, right? So it's not just about money. It's not just about prestige, right? People still have to feel connected. And so our predictive analytics have actually brought in qualitative signals, which is pretty amazing. And leadership actions, I usually riff a lot on the fact that most managers don't know how to be managers, right? Good engineer got promoted to run a team of engineers. And leadership actions is actually a hand-holding tool that for every manager walks them through what they can do to be a better manager. Initially it started as a list of static items, do these smart things. Over time what we did is we started to make it more and more sensitive to how a manager's employees are, whether it be their birthday, as simple as that, or they're having trouble with how comp is working, and that's indicated in their engagement survey. So millions of folks benefiting from what we're working on today. And then in my last 5 minutes or so, what I really want to talk about is what I believe is coming next, because we're at the very beginnings of the journey. So we talked about engagement and predictive analytics and helping managers make better decisions. I do think the next big challenge for us, what we're working on, is performance management. I am as dramatic as I can be about this. I do think it's a tragedy what exists today in the performance world, right? Think about it. Hundreds of millions of people basically cramming reviews of their peers or their underlings by 11:59 p.m. on that Sunday night that it's due, right? Shoving it into the system. And what? It goes into a black hole, never to be seen or heard from again, minus CYA material when someone gets terminated to show that, oh yeah, we actually did it, right? But in that data, that number and that text, right, that blob of text, that score is a person's future, right? Did they get promoted? Did they not? Right? Did they get to work on the team that they wanted to work on or not? Did they get put on a performance plan? So I really do think, as life and death is Romeo and Juliet, we've got to do something about this. This is unacceptable that this is the state of things in 2018. So where can AI help performance management? Where will it help it in the ultimate software world? 2 things that I think are really big takeaways. One, everyone's shifting from annual performance reviews to continuous, and we should sit back and laugh at that, right? more bad data is not a solution to absolutely anything, right? And so if you just keep polling people to give really junky reviews that are horribly biased or purely negative or purely positive, that didn't solve anything. It made the problem worse. So what we do with Xander in what we're building is we're actively coaching. So as people are typing, remember that cutesy graphic, we can actually insert comments about like, hey, can you please provide some evidence for what you just said? Or maybe you're being too negative compared to the rest of the company. Can you provide some positive suggestions? As simple as that, it's obviously very hard to do, but as simple as that from the perspective of the reviewer, enormously helpful, right? The unconscious bias that happens when men review women, for example, is mostly because we just don't have the right rubrics. Right? We don't know. We're not good managers. We're not trained to be managers. So we go, oh, yeah, like I enjoy talking to this person. So that's what I'll talk about in my performance reviews, how fun they are to work with. And so obviously we can help on the continuous side where we can help it make more feedback that's better. And the second part, I'll touch upon it a little more here. I'll double click. What's the evidence-based insights that we can get out of it? Reed Hastings has this amazing quote. It's a bit long here for this short session, but the idea is every company in their lobby has this really lofty set of goals, right? We believe in ethics and love and kisses and butterflies, right? But Enron had those same values, right? Like no company has bad values in their lobby. The real values are what get your team promoted, right? That's the thing that when you're reviewing someone and you go, hey, my engineer who's really optimistic, and by and large, people who are optimistic end up getting promoted at this company, that's the real value that gets you rewarded in this organization. So the behaviors and skills that are valued in fellow employees, that data already lives in your black hole database, right? Even with the challenges of bad, challenging data, people can't write the best performance reviews. You just need the right X-ray machine to understand what themes are present when someone gets a high score, what emotions are present if you're being reviewed by your underlings. And so what we're gonna do is bring to bear a little bit of that magic sauce, right? And the idea is, it's hard to read in the slide, but you can kind of see, what are the things that, irrespective of the words or the vernacular or even the language that your team speaks, what are the thematics of what you're being praised for or criticized for? How does that change over time? And then link that to, of course, your LMS. Or your opportunities to grow against it. And so the quote on the left here, is it just prima facie performance management? Who wants to pay a lot of money to manage performance, right? What company really cares about managing performance? Every company wants to make it better, right? And so in a world where artificial intelligence promises to crack a little bit of that nut of the human challenge, of the human brain, of the way we think, then it should really turn it into opportunities that are doing things the right way. And so 3 takeaways in the final minute that I have left with you. I do think that it's time, besides the hype, besides the eye rolling, I think there's definitely nuggets of value out there in the AI world. They're starting to come to bear. This is in the HR world. I think engagement and recruiting are 2 areas where we're starting to see significant opportunities turn into reality. I think it's safe to go into the water and start to poke around. I do think that as you go back to your companies, this is not common yet. I do want you to be on the vanguard. It is really important to know, where does the AI vendor want to drive it, right? Is their vision as big as yours? Is it to the future that you want, right? Or is it that HR with a joystick or customer relationship management with joystick? That kind of stuff is important to know. And hey, I'm not gonna make a value judgment. I just think it's valuable for everyone to understand. The final point is that this is a journey, right? We're at the very beginnings of this massive capability. And anyone that comes up and says it's all figured out, just buy these products and you're done, is either lying or incompetent or hopelessly optimistic. It's like one of those 3 things. It is a long, long path. Your minds are actually living in the world, the experiential challenges where we've looked at tools today in technology and basically said, oh, this is the best we could do. Well, now we're saying, oh, there's a whole different approach that can actually solve these problems the way a person would have solved them if those 5 challenges had been addressed about volume and velocity and all those things. And so I would encourage you really find vendors that you like, share the vision that you see, turn their output into what you need. And so I'm super excited about where it goes. I hope I can even start those conversations with the folks in this room. I really appreciate your time over the last half hour and look forward to seeing you out in the hall. Thank you.